I never thought betrayal could feel like ice in my veins, Madison whispered to herself as she stood outside the sleek glass doors of the downtown cafe, rain splattering against the sidewalk in a rhythm that matched the rapid pounding of her heart. Her hands gripped the worn leather straps of her backpack, knuckles white, as she replayed the text she had just discovered from her fiancé, words that burned hotter than any flame she had ever felt. I've been seeing someone else. The city around her blurred into streaks of neon as she hurried across the wet street, tires screeching behind her from a passing car, the smell of rain and asphalt mingling in the cool night air. Madison's mind raced, calculating the impossible, how to reclaim the power that had been stolen from her, how to turn heartbreak into leverage. That's when she saw him, standing under the yellow glow of a street lamp, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, black hair slicked back, and eyes the color of a storm-tossed ocean. Ethan Romano. He exuded authority, every inch of him radiating a quiet, magnetic control, his presence like gravity pulling her into a world she wasn't sure she belonged in. The soft hum of the city faded as he stepped closer, leather shoes silent against the pavement, and for a moment, Madison forgot to breathe. I hear you're looking for a way to make him regret everything, Ethan said, his voice low, deliberate, carrying the weight of unspoken power. She froze, uncertainty and intrigue warring within her, but the glint of opportunity in his eyes mirrored the fire igniting in her chest. Rain plastered strands of hair to her forehead, and the chill of the night made her shiver, but something in Ethan's gaze promised a warmth that was both dangerous and intoxicating. Every instinct told her to run, to turn back to the safety of what little normalcy remained, but Madison's fingers tightened on her bag, determination solidifying like steel. I want him to feel the consequences of what he did, she admitted, voice trembling yet firm, the words tasting like liberation. Ethan's lips curved into the faintest hint of a knowing smile, and in that instant, the possibilities stretched before her, vast and uncharted. The hum of the city returned, distant horns and footsteps punctuating the tension that had cocooned them in that streetlight's halo, and Madison realized that her life had just taken a turn she could never have imagined. A plan was forming, subtle and deliberate, one that would intertwine her fate with Ethan's in ways that promised power, strategy, and the sharp thrill of revenge. She inhaled, letting the cool night fill her lungs, heart pounding, aware that the first step had been taken, and the path ahead was as thrilling as it was perilous, leaving her wondering if she was ready for everything that was about to unfold. Madison followed Ethan through the shadowed streets, the neon lights bouncing off puddles on the asphalt, casting fractured reflections across their path. The city seemed quieter now, a subtle hush as if it understood the gravity of the conversation unfolding between them. Each step they took brought her closer to a reality she had never imagined, a world where power and influence dictated every choice. Yet Ethan moved with an ease that suggested command over it all, his eyes scanning every corner, alert to details Madison could not yet see. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of rain-soaked concrete mixed with the subtle cologne Ethan wore, sharp and deliberate, leaving a trace in her senses she could not shake. Madison's heart raced, a mix of excitement and apprehension, as she tried to process how someone so calculated could also seem so attuned to her every reaction. They reached a sleek black car waiting under the overhang of a quiet side street, tires slick against the wet pavement, and Ethan gestured for her to enter. She hesitated only for a second before sliding into the back seat, the leather cold beneath her hands as she adjusted her coat against the chill. Ethan took the driver's seat with practiced precision, the engine purring to life, a soft growl against the silence of the night. As they drove, the cityscape unfolded past the tinted windows, towering buildings bathed in the glow of streetlights, a reminder of the world she had always inhabited and the world she was stepping into. Madison's mind raced through scenarios, each one more daring than the last, questioning how far she was willing to go and what she might become in this new alignment. Ethan spoke only when necessary, his voice a controlled cadence that drew her attention fully, each word deliberate, leaving no space for doubt. He outlined a plan not with menace but with clarity, emphasizing strategy, observation, and timing, his insight into human behavior strikingly precise. Madison listened intently, absorbing every detail, the initial shock of betrayal gradually transmuting into focus, a determination to act within the boundaries he suggested, yet on her own terms. They passed the familiar streets that she had walked countless times alone, now transformed into avenues of opportunity, each corner a potential for calculated movement, each crosswalk a metaphor for decisions weighing consequences. Ethan's gaze occasionally flicked toward her, measuring not just her understanding but her resolve, and in those moments Madison realized that trust, though cautiously extended, was forming between them. The city lights reflected in her eyes, a mixture of fear and anticipation, the hum of the engine blending with the pulse in her veins. Madison adjusted her posture, straightening her spine, silently committing to the path she had begun, aware that the journey ahead would test her in ways both subtle and profound. The car slowed as they approached a modern building with minimalist lines and polished stone, a threshold into the environment Ethan had described, each detail meticulously planned. Madison took a deep breath, the cool night air filling her lungs, and as she opened the door, she stepped forward with a blend of caution and courage, the anticipation of the unknown stretching out before her, leaving a lingering sense that the first chapter of her new reality had just begun, and every step from here would demand vigilance, intelligence, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. The lobby of the building was quiet except for the faint hum of the elevators and the occasional shuffle of polished shoes across marble floors, Madison following Ethan with a cautious but growing confidence, her eyes scanning every detail of the sleek environment he had brought her into. The walls were adorned with contemporary art, abstract shapes in bold colors that seemed almost alive under the soft glow of recessed lighting, casting subtle shadows that played across the floor and heightened the sense of anticipation. Ethan led the way with a measured pace, his posture impeccable, movements deliberate and commanding, without a single word wasted, and Madison could feel the weight of his presence like gravity pulling her forward, guiding her deeper into this unfamiliar world. Each door they passed hinted at offices, rooms filled with secrets, and spaces designed for planning and precision, and she realized how meticulous Ethan's environment reflected the control he exercised over everything in his life. As they reached a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, he gestured for her to sit, the chair cool against her palms, and she obeyed, absorbing the tension in the air as he closed the door behind them with a soft, final click. Ethan's gaze swept over her again, piercing and assessing, as if measuring not just her readiness but the resolve she carried within, and Madison felt a flicker of determination ignite stronger than before, a blend of fear and exhilaration coursing through her. He began to outline the framework for her next steps, the plan carefully structured to maximize impact without revealing vulnerabilities, and Madison listened intently, taking mental notes, her pulse quickening with every strategic detail he revealed. The city lights outside painted streaks across the floor, and she noticed how even the smallest reflection in the glass seemed to pulse in sync with her heartbeat, reminding her of the stakes and the precise timing that every action required. She asked questions, each answer sharpening her understanding, and Ethan's responses were measured, layered with subtle lessons in patience and observation, reinforcing the importance of calculated moves over impulsive reactions. Madison felt herself being drawn into a rhythm, an unspoken cadence of planning and anticipation that resonated with her own inner drive for justice and control, and she realized that the partnership forming between them was delicate, potent, and filled with potential for both empowerment and challenge. The office seemed suspended in time as the discussion continued, the hum of the building fading into a background soundtrack that underscored the intensity of the moment, and Madison's thoughts raced with scenarios, contingencies, and opportunities, her mind alive with the possibilities that lay before her. Ethan paused occasionally, allowing the gravity of each instruction to settle, the silence accentuating the weight of their plan, and Madison embraced the focus it demanded, the quiet becoming a space where her resolve crystallized. By the time the meeting concluded, she felt a sense of clarity and purpose, an unshakable understanding of the steps ahead, knowing that the night had marked not just a transition, but the beginning of a carefully orchestrated journey where every decision would carry consequence, every movement would matter, and every observation could tip the balance in their favor, leaving Madison standing on the threshold of a new reality, aware that the first deliberate steps of her plan had begun and the city outside was both stage and opponent in the intricate game she was about to play. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime, and Madison stepped into the quiet corridor beyond, the soft carpet muffling each footfall as they moved toward the private suite Ethan had prepared for their discussion. The walls were lined with shelves containing books, awards, and artifacts that spoke of calculated achievement and a life meticulously curated, each object seemingly chosen to reflect not just wealth, but insight, strategy, and influence. Madison's eyes darted from the polished floors to the muted lighting above, taking in every detail, every nuance of the environment, sensing that even the smallest corner of this space had a purpose she had yet to fully comprehend. Ethan walked beside her, measured and deliberate, and she could feel the subtle vibration of authority in every gesture he made, the quiet rhythm of his steps commanding attention without a word spoken. As they approached a large window that stretched from floor to ceiling, overlooking the city streets below, the lights of the buildings reflected off the glass, creating a mosaic of opportunity and danger, reminding Madison that every decision she made in this space carried weight beyond the immediate. Ethan turned slightly to look at her, his gaze steady, piercing, and unyielding, assessing her resolve as he explained the next steps in their plan with precision, outlining not just actions but timing, observation, and subtleties of human behavior that could tip the scales in their favor. Madison listened, her mind alert, absorbing every detail, each instruction sharpening her focus and strengthening the determination that had brought her here. The subtle scent of leather and cologne mingled with the crisp night air drifting through a partially open window, a sensory reminder that she was moving into a world structured by control, calculation, and careful strategy, a realm she had only glimpsed from the outside. They paused as a soft hum from the security system provided a backdrop to Ethan's explanation, the faint clicking of mechanisms serving as a reminder that every element was in place, every contingency considered. Madison adjusted her posture, grounding herself in the moment, allowing the flow of information and strategy to imprint upon her awareness, feeling both the thrill of potential and the weight of responsibility. Outside, the city carried on unaware, traffic lights blinking, cars passing, pedestrians moving in their own rhythms. Yet within these walls, time seemed suspended, focused entirely on preparation, observation, and the orchestration of influence. Madison's hands rested lightly on the polished surface of a desk as she visualized the actions Ethan described, imagining the sequences unfolding, the interactions, the subtle manipulations that would allow them to achieve their goal with precision. She realized that in this space, patience, awareness, and timing were as powerful as any bold move, and her understanding of control, consequence, and strategy deepened with every carefully chosen word Ethan spoke. The moment was charged, silent but potent, leaving Madison aware that each step forward was a calculated move in a larger game, and that the evening ahead would demand insight, composure, and courage beyond what she had experienced before, leaving her poised at the threshold of a carefully orchestrated plan that would test her resolve and ingenuity in ways she had only begun to imagine. The city lights blurred through the tinted windows as Madison followed Ethan down the private staircase, each step measured and deliberate, the soft padding of their shoes on the polished stone echoing faintly in the empty corridor. The air was cool, carrying the subtle scent of leather and cologne, a reminder of the meticulous control Ethan wielded over every detail of his world. As they entered the strategy room, Madison's eyes widened at the sight of the large interactive map spread across the table, markers and notes meticulously arranged, each line and color representing movement, influence, and timing that she could only begin to comprehend. Ethan gestured for her to stand beside him, and she noticed the way the lights highlighted the faint tattoo along his forearm, a mark of identity and permanence, a quiet assertion of authority. He explained the sequence of steps for the plan with precision, each word deliberate, highlighting contingencies, human behavior patterns, and timing, guiding Madison through the intricate balance between patience and action. Madison absorbed every instruction, her mind mapping scenarios and visualizing outcomes, each possibility sharpening her focus and determination, transforming the initial shock of betrayal into a controlled sense of purpose. Outside the large windows, the city pulsed with life. Unaware of the calculated maneuvers unfolding above, the distant sounds of traffic and sirens blending into a rhythmic backdrop that underscored the gravity of the moment. Madison shifted slightly, grounding herself in the reality of her choices, the anticipation of action mingling with the weight of responsibility, every movement in the plan reflecting both subtlety and impact. Ethan's gaze met hers, unwavering and precise, conveying assessment, expectation, and an unspoken challenge that demanded clarity, decisiveness, and engagement. She straightened, matching his intensity, recognizing that the partnership forming between them required trust, observation, and an acute awareness of consequence, each decision a thread in a larger tapestry of strategy. The room seemed to breathe with them, a space suspended in tension and potential, where insight, composure, and foresight dictated success. Madison's hands rested lightly on the edge of the table, tracing lines and markers as she internalized the plan, feeling the shift from passive observer to active participant in a carefully orchestrated endeavor. The hum of the building, subtle and consistent, filled the background, accentuating the weight of the instructions and the importance of execution. Madison exhaled slowly, her pulse steadying, understanding that the first phase of the plan required not just action but precise timing, the anticipation of responses, and the alignment of opportunity. She glanced once more at the city beyond the glass, the streets illuminated in amber light, and felt the electric tension of potential, the blend of risk, power, and strategy coalescing into a singular focus, leaving her aware that every choice made from this point forward would shape the trajectory of events, positioning her at the center of a game defined by influence, calculation, and measured control. With Ethan guiding her, observing, and challenging her to match his exacting standards as they prepared to move forward together into the unfolding night. The late-night city skyline stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows as Madison stood beside Ethan, the ambient glow of streetlights reflecting off the polished surfaces of the office and casting long shadows that danced with the faint hum of distant traffic. Her mind replayed the strategy they had outlined, every detail, every contingency, and the weight of anticipation pressed on her chest, steadying her focus as the rhythm of her pulse matched the cadence of thought and calculation. Ethan's presence remained commanding, his posture impeccable, a subtle shift of his shoulders or tilt of his head communicating volumes without uttering a single word, a silent language of authority and observation that Madison was learning to interpret with precision. He moved to the interactive table and began adjusting markers and notes, demonstrating timing, approach, and the subtle orchestration of influence, and Madison followed each movement closely, internalizing the flow of decisions and consequences. The faint scent of coffee mingled with the subtle cologne that clung to Ethan, the sensory details grounding her in the moment as her imagination visualized each scenario unfolding with clarity and anticipation. Outside, the city moved in patterns of light and shadow, unaware of the deliberate planning occurring within these walls, every illuminated window a reminder of opportunity and timing beyond immediate perception. Madison's fingers traced the edge of the table, feeling the smoothness of the surface as if it carried the gravity of every plan, her mind aligning with the rhythm Ethan set, blending patience with intuition, observation with action, and careful consideration with the subtle thrill of strategic anticipation. The instructions flowed methodically, each one layered with potential outcomes, adjustments, and measures for unseen contingencies, the complexity sharpening Madison's focus, transforming uncertainty into a tangible path forward. Ethan's eyes occasionally flicked toward her, a mixture of assessment and expectation, challenging her to maintain precision, to read the nuances of timing, and to internalize the weight of each decision before execution. The city beyond the glass remained a backdrop of shifting lights, distant movement, and endless possibilities, a living canvas for the plans they were laying. While Madison felt the surge of readiness and calculated confidence building within her, knowing that each measured step they prepared now could shape the unfolding events with subtlety and effectiveness. She inhaled slowly, the cool night air mingling with the controlled environment around them, steadying her heart and centering her thoughts as the first tangible phases of their plan were taking form, each consideration, each observed variable, each strategic choice a thread. In the carefully constructed network of influence they were beginning to weave, Madison realized that understanding, timing, and clarity were as vital as courage, and that the partnership forming between her and Ethan was defined by observation, calculation, and the precise balance of patience and action, leaving her poised on the brink of execution with awareness and anticipation as the city stretched beneath them in silent, pulsing expectancy. The night had deepened, and the city lights cast long reflections across the polished floors as Madison and Ethan reviewed the next phase of their plan, her eyes following his every movement, noting the subtle gestures, the way his hands hovered over the markers, shifting them with precision and intent. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the climate control system and the distant murmur of traffic far below, yet the intensity between them made the space feel alive with tension and anticipation. Madison's thoughts raced as she visualized the steps Ethan had outlined, each action, each timing, each anticipated response, and she felt a growing confidence, a transformation from the anxious uncertainty that had accompanied her earlier that evening into a poised readiness to act. Ethan's voice broke the silence occasionally, deliberate and measured, guiding her through sequences of observation, influence, and strategic decision-making, each instruction layered with purpose and consequence. Madison adjusted her posture, grounding herself in the moment, letting the combination of insight and strategy sink in fully, her pulse steady yet alert, ready for the controlled unfolding of events they had meticulously planned. The faint reflection of lights in the large glass window seemed to mirror her internal focus, each flicker reinforcing the connection between observation and action, opportunity and consequence. Ethan paused, studying her, his piercing gaze conveying assessment and expectation, and Madison met it with determination, realizing that her role was now active, not passive, a participant in a carefully orchestrated plan where awareness, timing, and subtle influence were as powerful as any overt action. The interactive map on the table reflected their shared focus, markers and lines representing potential movements, anticipated reactions, and the intricate flow of decisions required to execute the plan effectively. Madison's fingers traced the edges of the markers as she internalized each detail, mentally rehearsing each sequence, visualizing the consequences and contingencies with clarity and precision. Outside, the city pulsed with life and quiet, unaware of the deliberate choreography unfolding above, and Madison felt the exhilaration of purpose, the sense that each calculated step would ripple outward in ways carefully predicted, the blend of strategy and anticipation coursing through her as she absorbed the weight and potential of the plan. Ethan's quiet presence beside her remained steady, an anchor of focus and authority, his subtle guidance shaping her understanding and readiness, each word and movement reinforcing the importance of precision, observation, and calculated action. Madison inhaled deeply, allowing the controlled tension to fill her senses, heart steady, mind alert, and as she looked out over the city, she realized that every decision, every movement, every carefully considered observation from this point forward would carry weight, positioning her at the center of a sequence that demanded both courage and intellect, leaving her poised on the edge of execution with anticipation and confidence in equal measure. The evening air had grown cooler as Madison and Ethan stepped onto the terrace, the lights of the city twinkling below like a sea of stars, each street and building a reminder of the world they navigated with deliberate intention. The faint hum of the city rose from below, distant and rhythmic, a backdrop to the quiet tension that surrounded them, and Madison felt the pulse of possibility in each measured breath. Ethan stood slightly ahead, posture straight and commanding, eyes scanning the horizon as he outlined the culmination of their plan, emphasizing timing, observation, and precision, every word a carefully chosen thread in the fabric of their strategy. Madison absorbed each instruction, mentally rehearsing sequences, predicting reactions, and considering contingencies, her mind alight with the interplay of cause and effect, and her body attuned to the controlled intensity of the moment. The cool breeze teased strands of her hair across her face, and she brushed them back, feeling both alert and centered, aware that her focus and composure would determine the success of the intricate measures they were about to execute. Ethan's voice, low and deliberate, guided her through the final adjustments, highlighting subtle opportunities, potential pitfalls, and the importance of maintaining observation while executing with finesse, and Madison felt a surge of confidence as she internalized the nuances of his guidance. The city lights reflected off the glass panels surrounding them, casting fragmented patterns across the terrace floor that seemed to mirror the strategic mapping in her mind, reinforcing the importance of clarity, timing, and subtle influence. Madison's gaze moved from Ethan to the skyline, taking in the expanse, imagining the flow of events, and feeling the blend of anticipation and purpose course through her, transforming uncertainty into a sense of controlled empowerment. Ethan shifted slightly, allowing her to step forward, to practice the observation, to feel the rhythm of calculated action, and Madison recognized the gravity of the role she was now embracing, the intersection of patience, foresight, and decisive movement. Each instruction, each observation, each mental rehearsal solidified her understanding that success relied not on haste, but on careful, deliberate alignment with the cues, responses, and rhythms of those involved. And she felt the shift from reactive to proactive, prepared to act with both strategy and insight. The terrace seemed suspended in time, the soft glow of the city blending with the internal focus of their minds, each detail a layer in the intricate unfolding of events. And Madison realized that the evening marked not just execution, but a transformation, a precise choreography of intention, observation, and calculated interaction. Her pulse steadied, thoughts sharpened, and as she glanced at Ethan, she understood the unspoken challenge he extended, the expectation of insight, timing, and composure that would carry them through the night, leaving her poised at the edge of action, aware that the next steps would define the trajectory of their plan and the impact of every decision made under the watchful glow of the city lights. Madison stood at the edge of the terrace, city lights stretching infinitely before her, each illuminated window a reminder of the countless lives moving through their routines, unaware of the meticulous strategy unfolding above them. Ethan's presence beside her was steady, his posture commanding, a silent reassurance that every calculated decision would be supported by precision, observation, and experience, and she felt a growing trust, a recognition that her own judgment now mattered as part of a coordinated plan. The soft hum of distant traffic, the faint flicker of neon reflections, and the occasional wind brushing against her coat created a sensory rhythm that matched the careful cadence of thought and anticipation in her mind. Ethan gestured toward the skyline, pointing out landmarks, timing windows, and key positions, his voice low, deliberate, and resonant, conveying layers of insight that Madison absorbed with growing confidence, visualizing sequences, outcomes, and contingencies as they would unfold. Her hands rested lightly on the railing, fingers tracing the smooth metal, grounding her as she internalized each element of the plan, the interplay between patience and timing, observation and action, becoming clear and tangible. Madison's gaze flickered to Ethan, noting the subtle shift in his expression, the nuanced signals that conveyed approval, assessment, and expectation, and she mirrored his focus, committing to precision and clarity in thought and movement. The city beyond seemed to breathe with them, a living, distant audience, its hum a backdrop to the tension and readiness that enveloped them, the glow of streets and buildings framing the horizon where opportunity and timing intersected. Ethan outlined final considerations, subtle adjustments that required acute awareness, anticipation, and composure, emphasizing the power of observation, the influence of timing, and the necessity of adapting to unfolding variables, and Madison felt the resonance of responsibility and potential in every word. The air was cool, carrying faint scents of rain and urban life, blending with the controlled environment around them. And Madison inhaled deeply, centering herself, letting the clarity of purpose sharpen her focus, heighten her awareness, and strengthen her resolve. Each instruction, each assessment, each mental rehearsal solidified her role in the plan, transforming apprehension into determination and anticipation into preparedness, allowing her to feel the weight of influence and the precision of calculated action. Ethan's eyes met hers one last time before the terrace door closed softly behind them, a silent acknowledgement of readiness and trust, leaving Madison poised, alert, and fully aware that every deliberate step from this point forward would define the trajectory of events, the impact of choices made, and the delicate balance between strategy, observation, and execution, setting the stage for the culmination of their efforts and the unfolding of consequences that demanded focus, intelligence, and courage in equal measure.